Hi, this is Nick Spencer, and these guys, right? You're listening to Amazing Spider Talk. Still not canceled.
Too many who know the angles, uncover and untangle all the questions and the webs left out to tangle. I'll be in 1962, last Wednesday's afternoon. They'll bend your ears with reckless self-abandon. The amazing spider talk. The amazing spider talk. Come swing through the air, sit back and prepare for the amazing spider talk.
Hello, I'm Dapper Dan Gavosdin, and I'm the founder and editor of AmazingSpiderTalk.com.
And I'm Mischievous Marcinacchio, the founder of the Chasing Amazing blog and author of 100 Things Spider-Man Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die.
Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this special review roundup episode of the all-new Amazing Spider Talk. We hope you enjoy this podcast and that it provides an intelligent conversation between two fans and collectors as we look at the Spider-Man comic universe in a bit of a bigger picture.
Today, we're going to be rounding up our Patreon reviews of Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 14 through 16, also known as Legacy numbers 815 through 817, as Spider-Man encounters the Rhino and a friend from his past returns. We originally recorded these conversations back when the issues were first released for our Patreon audience.
So remember, this episode wouldn't be possible without support from our wonderful Patreon subscribers, whose patronage allows us to assemble the guests we have on the show and do all of our research. If you enjoy this show and want to help us continue while getting amazing bonus content like these reviews when they were originally released to our Patreon subscribers and other additional episodes that we never released publicly, go check out our show notes and go over to our Patreon page and consider joining our team.
And speaking of joining our team, Dan, let's offer a huge special thank you to our incredibly generous new patrons, including Christopher Perez,
Austin Morales,
Brendan Roberts,
and Matthew Amuso. Do you think Austin Morales is some distant cousin of Miles?
Yeah, from like Earth 642.
What, is there some special designation to 642?
No, I just came up with it.
All right, perfect. And I think that's about how Marvel does it.
More or less.
Yeah. So, on that note, I wanted to thank our patrons, whether you're still with us or not for over the years, because, Mark and I have used the money for a variety of things, like doing our special 200th episode. And one of the big things we've been saving up for is kind of making everything better for us through redesigning our website. And actually starting tomorrow, our website is going to start getting some redesigns in a major way to kind of emphasize the podcast and allow Mark and I to do all kinds of new things. But the number one thing we really want to do is bring our listeners and fans and supporters into the process a bit more. And that means like doing live video podcasting and more comment feeds and more ways to get you involved. And that's kind of what the site is going to be kind of built around, this kind of interactivity between all of us. And we couldn't have done it without all of you. And this isn't going to be happening for some months or two as I work with our developer to tweak things here and there, but it was only made possible through your donations to the show. Mark and I don't take any profit from this. It's all going into making the show a better product. And the website, I hope when it is done, you enjoy it. And Mark and I will talk more about that when the time comes, but know that your contributions have really gone a long way.
Excellent. Dan, I cannot wait to see where this goes next. And obviously a very special thanks to all the support over the years for allowing us to make this huge step. It's going to be really super exciting.
I can't wait. But in the meantime, let's get into our review of Amazing Spider-Man number 14.
What's new? Is Spider-Man still wearing leather? Is it blue? Maybe he took a week off 'cause he had the flu. But probably not 'cause his methods seem tried and true. Let's find out in the Spider-Man review.
Well, Mark, we are here today to talk about Amazing Spider-Man Volume 5, number 14, also known as Legacy number 815. It's a bit of an odd issue. We kind of broke away from our two core artists, Humberto Ramos and Ryan Otley, and we got this kind of guest appearance by Chris Bacalo, who I think is coming back for a couple more issues down the line eventually as we get into like the Hunted story arc. Mark, this book is kind of a round robin of villains and side characters, kind of a palette cleanser. What did you think of this issue?
Yeah, I mean, it was a pretty good way to kick off a new arc in a way, while also I feel like we're finally starting to get some dots being connected from some of these earlier things involving Kraven and the Lizard and Taskmaster and Black Ant. So it's good to kind of start to see some progress in that regard. I mean, I guess the only thing in terms of the dangling storylines that's missing from this is the man in or Shush, right? That's what we're calling him, Shush.
Yeah, we haven't seen Shush in a while, which I'm kind of happy about. Let's stick with what's coming more immediately.
Oh yeah, I'm not necessarily asking for Shush. I'm just saying this did feel like after kind of wrapping up this Jonah story, and we're starting to see more progress. Although I'm still kind of curious where this thing with Kraven the Hunter is all leading to. We can talk a little bit more specifically about that in a second. But yeah, I mean, I liked it. I mean, I got to be honest. I mean, the one thing, kind of as a broad stroke to start things off, maybe is after I'm really liking how Ryan Ottley's artwork meshes with Nick Spencer's writing. I feel like the Ottley Spencer issues are probably been my favorite so far of this run. And, I was not the hugest Chris Bacalo fan. I think going back to when he was on the book the first time around with some of the Brand New Day or I guess the Gauntlet stuff, whatever. I'm trying to remember exactly what period it was. And yeah, it just seems like a little too loose and sketchy. I mean, like his Lizard is good, but so the art did take me out of it a little way, especially like some of his characters out of costume. I mean, like his Peter looks very young. His Dr. Connors looked very odd to me, like big round nose, and so it was kind of throwing me a little bit. But I like the direction of the story itself. I like what Spencer's kind of building here. So that's my big broad stroke to start.
I don't disagree with you about a number of the complaints that you have about the art. I really like Chris Bacalo's stuff. I think he's been really great on Doctor Strange in recent years, and I liked his stuff in the Brand New Day era. There's that great Winter in New York story, and with the Aztec gods and Shed. Well, I don't really love the writing in that book. I thought the art was really beautiful. I think his Lizard is really grotesque and fun on the page. But I agree with you. I've always kind of had a problem with his Peter and kind of supporting cast. They look like they're teenagers at best, which kind of coupled with a moment in this book, which we'll talk about later, brings into question just how old Peter is in this book. I do like his kind of expressiveness and willingness to get creative with panel layouts. Sometimes I find them completely indecipherable. There's a number of books that I can think of where I remember looking at the pages and being like, I have no idea what's going on here. I don't think this issue suffers from that. I think that the visuals are pretty clear, and I think Spencer is a pretty clear writer for a number of different art styles, which I've liked. I've never found a Nick Spencer book where I was confused by the art and the writing and how they're paired together. So I have to think that he's kind of good at taking charge on that. But yeah, there's some things here that are very strange. I think the Connors and Peter are the two main ones to point out. And when your book is about Peter, it is strange to see him portrayed in this way. But he's another guy like Ottley where it's I'll see his villains any day of the week. I love that his Rhino in this is as grotesque as he is, and that his costume is so patchwork. It takes me back to the Ramita days where that costume wasn't really a full piece, but something that was grafted onto his skin. There's something kind of fun about that.
Yeah, I agree with that. His Rhino definitely was very good in this too, and I liked his Taskmaster and Black Ant too. I mean, I guess maybe like I said, the issue is the out of costume stuff, which is something I've kind of picked on with other artists. That I feel like they do better in costume than out of costume, which is, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, you're doing a superhero book. Obviously, costumes are more fun, but
yeah. And this issue in particular is very out of costume. It's very much a people book.
Yeah, which is I think why I kind of got taken out of it a couple times. Like his Aunt May looks strange to me. Like it just kind of, if it wasn't for the captions and the dialogue, I wouldn't have known who some of these people were. They just seemed very unrecognizable to me.
It's an even starker comparison with Otley, whose characters are very Romita-esque. They're very crisp and clean, and the framing is very old school and conventional. And suddenly to get an issue like this, it's like, I would say it's even starker than going from like a Ditko to a Romita.
Right. I mean, not for nothing, we're going to get a character reveal later in this story that I missed completely. Now, granted, we got some clues from the text, but maybe, I don't know, like maybe the art took me out of it too. I'm making all of my excuses now, Dan.
I'm going to jump right ahead for a second and go, even if Ned Leeds was drawn to look like Ned Leeds, would you be able to pull him out of a lineup? I couldn't tell you what Ned Leeds looks like.
I mean, unless his throat is slit and he's sitting in a hotel room in Germany, probably not, but
no, he's like any man bloke. Like he just looks like every other dude. He doesn't have like Tootsie Roll hair or anything like that. Like, I think the intention behind his design was that he was literally anybody but Peter Parker.
Right. And since we've already jumped to it, yes, there is a bearded man who shows up later in this book. Through the clues, Dan was able to pretty easily decipher that it was Ned Leeds, and it wasn't until I opened the notes for this episode that I was like, oh, that was Ned Leeds. Interesting.
Mark, you're a gracious host because you could have easily not admitted that, and I would have let it fly, and here you are admitting it. So, you know what? I'm going to tip my hat to you instead of really mocking you about it. For this episode, at least.
Yeah, I wanted to steer into the skid for this one, okay? Maybe next time. Maybe next time I'll try and get out of it. But, might as well go into it.
Well, you're not the only person I've noticed that missed it. Like, I think Kane from the Untold Talks said that he thought it was Sentry. So that's almost the opposite direction of you.
Right, okay. I mean, I was just like, oh, it's some homeless guy. Like, I was thinking none of that. I was like, this isn't anyone of any significance whatsoever.
Well, let's go to the beginning of this issue where we get this kind of wrap up from the previous issue with like Arcade kind of trying to explain away why nobody's getting paid for the job they did for the big man or the big man junior or what are we calling him? The big man?
There we go. Big man.
Yeah. What did you think of this little bit? I mean, I thought if anything, Bacalo's art brought this to life a lot. The kind of quirkiness of Arcade.
Yeah. I mean, like, I feel like this was a good bow on top of the Arcade arc. I enjoy Arcade and kind of the sadistic humor element of it. I think the only thing that kind of threw me with this was, we finally get the visual appearance of Craven because we have not seen Craven yet, have we? Even though we have.
We have.
Oh, we have?
saw Otley draw him. Yeah. Okay. At the end of the first 5 issues.
Okay. That's right. We did. But like, this is like the second reminder of Craven. And that this arc has been building. And, so it was good to see him. I mean, the thing that kind of threw me was him kind of coming out and, I felt some funny one-liners from Arcade to Craven, courtesy of Spencer. But then there was this thing of, I want you to build me something. And like, there was a part of me that's like, I mean, on one end, Craven is the hunter, and what could the hunter possibly need built for him? I mean, from someone like Arcade, that would to me indicate something more technological and less primal. But we are seeing within the Spencer run that characters are growing in different directions than what we're used to. So let's wait and see, right?
Yeah, we're going to have to wait and see on this one. I think one of the big things that I've kind of taken away from the Spencer run so far is that, like, the more time we give him, the more our questions and concerns are going to be answered or solved. Like, I remember complaining when the Lizard first showed up, like, oh, are we throwing away all of the old Lizard stories that we got that led up to this point? Like, what happened to his family? What happened to X, Y, and Z? And then in this issue, not to get, move on, but I mean, it's a good transition into it. Like, we do get that back again. Like the Lizard's family is involved in all this, and we are acknowledging the history. Okay, maybe we're not acknowledging that the Lizard's body is made out of brain matter, Which, you know what, like, that's what a good, follow-up should do, is go, what worked and what didn't? Let's throw out the stuff that didn't work,
right,
and stick with the stuff that did. And I think this new dynamic for the Lizard is very interesting. So, like, he's slowly winning me over, with time. It's like, okay, he's gonna address it all. We're gonna get to it. So with the Craven stuff, it's like I'm inclined to give him the benefit of the doubt, even if it's like a weird partnership. I would say, I don't know. I'm curious to see where it goes, and I kind of want all of Spencer's storytelling to like speed it up a little bit, but he does seem to eventually get to all of our concerns.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a kind of Bendis-esque deconstruction going on here with some of these plot points, which can be frustrating. Like you said, maybe it reads differently in a trade, although then again, we got a lot of previous issues, not so much in this one, a lot of like recaps of the previous issue kind of stuff, which I don't know how that would work in a trade. But there does, like you just said, when you kind of start to see things falling into place, there seems to be kind of a method to the madness of this deliberate pace, and it gives me more of a reason to kind of give Spencer the benefit of the doubt here that we're going somewhere. Because yeah, like you said, this new status quo with the Connors family was pretty interesting. Also worth noting, I feel like in the world of superhero comic books, no one has more awkward dinners than Peter Parker / Spider-Man. I mean, I think we need to start coming up with a running count of how many times dinners have been ruined that Peter has attended, because it just seems to be a lot.
Did it have to be in the sewer? Like, can't somebody get these guys an apartment somewhere?
Right.
I mean, is he being paid that poorly as a teacher that he has to like keep his family below ground? Right.
But even that, not even just the fact it's in the sewer. I mean, you got Billy fighting and storming off, and I mean, like he's eating with lizard people. It's just like, I don't know what's worse, having like Harry Osborn like tying every, Sins Past. Since remembered the JMD story from the 90s,
like the Child Within kind of stuff.
Thank you. Yeah, Child Within. Like I mean, that's a good awkward dinner. There's of course the Norman Osborn Spectacular Spider-Man Magazine #2 dinner party. I just feel like there's a lot of really painful dinners in Spider-Man comic books. And
is that the kind of dinner where you bring your girlfriend along?
Well, that's it too. I was like, wow. He's like, I mean, MJ is really kind of just being progressive about this. I mean, truly.
Yeah, I thought it was a really macabre scene and interesting. If this is the direction we're staying down, I mean, is there a more like bizarre scenario where the Lizard is hosting dinner with the two people that he's eaten and brought back to life?
Right. No, there isn't. But the other thing that I really liked about the scene is that I feel like it would have been easy and thus probably less fulfilling as a reader if Spencer kind of played this more cheaply, like for some like stupid laughs or goofy jokes. But like this was, putting aside the actual ridiculousness of lizard people having dinner in a sewer with Peter Parker and Mary Jane. I mean, this was a very honest family moment with Billy and his father, and just kind of like them having to live with this new status quo, and Dr. Connors trying to kind of manage it, but knowing because of how he screwed up previously that this is why their life is so different now. Like it felt like a real family crisis and struggle, and it felt very authentic to me, despite the fact that everything else about it is patently absurd. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. Well, there you go. That's superhero comics for you. Yeah. I mean, what I like about it is that it keeps the themes of the Lizard alive in a different way. It's still kind of about, Connors dealing with his control issues. Like he's not so out of control as the guy who's trying to keep the Lizard at bay, but now he's like trying to keep control of his lizard family, which inevitably will fail for him. Like Billy will go out and rejoin the world, and it's about him like kind of coming to grips with his legacy in a different way. It's like it's the same thing, just kind of twisted in a new way. And I think if you can do that with villains, you keep them fresh and interesting. The same way we saw with, like, Otto, whether it's like him being superior as Dr. Octopus or Spider-Man, it's dealing with the same things that the character has always been about. And I thought that was really great. And his confession that he remains in the lizard around his family in order to make them feel less awkward is, it's the kind of warmth and kindness that we've seen from Connors, but it also is kind of, as always, born out of a place of, like, kind of selfishness and his own kind of covering up for his own shortcomings and desire to take the shortcut as a scientist. So I found that this all very interesting and can't wait to see where it goes.
Absolutely. Agreed 100% on that.
What do you think about this offer for Peter to kind of join Connors? We've been kind of hemming and hawing around this for like 15 issues, and I'm kind of getting bored of it. To skip ahead in the book, MJ confronts Peter about this and says, like, are you going to do this? You still have time, but, like, you seem to be not jumping at it. And Peter admits that it feels like a step back for him. Not that he's too old for it, but that he's already been there and done that, and it's time to do something else. Do you think they're ultimately going to go with this decision, or this is all a conversation to find a way for Peter to do something completely different?
I mean, I couldn't necessarily predict which. I mean, like, I feel like, the Chekhovian gun element is that he's going to do this in some fashion, but I kind of agree with his character here that it does kind of feel a little rote to me in terms of things that we've been there and done that. I mean, I don't know. Like, on one end, I don't know if we necessarily need to see Peter become a CEO or a mega inventor again, but, I feel like, I don't know, sending them back to school just feels like I don't know what stories they could possibly do at this point. I probably the least amount of stories we got from Peter that I'd be interested in seeing a little more of are Peter the teacher. Like that was still some of my favorite kind of like Peter professional / like out of costume life stuff that we ever got. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about him kind of being back in a schooling setting for himself, even if he's helping out Dr. Connors. I don't know.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I also think, like, to Peter's point in this issue about his desire to not have to shorthand the people that he's working with or for to go and save the world. Like, he's trying to find a situation where all of this matches. And it's the kind of thing where, like, going back to teaching wouldn't work in that regard. We already saw how that played out, which was pretty disastrously. And the Horizon thing felt like the most obvious thing for where Peter would go, but we're definitely not going to head that direction again. So I don't really know what it is, other than, like, seeing Peter do Uber, which we kind of saw in, like, issue 2 or 3 of this run. So, like, I don't know what's going to provide him that kind of flexibility and take advantage of his own, abilities, other than kind of being an inventor on his own, which we kind of already saw. So, like, Spencer definitely had something in mind, I would imagine, but I'm not smart enough to figure out what it is. So, but I think we both agree that it seems like, even though this has been floated out there, he's probably not going to end up going the college route.
Yeah. Why don't we talk a little bit about some of the Aunt May stuff here, because I thought that was kind of interesting. This is probably the first big May scene that we've had in a while, right? I mean, is this Spencer's first real big May subplot, or did he do something earlier? I'm trying to remember my history here.
I mean, we've seen her and Peter kind of get into that brief fight that was kind of undone in the first arc.
Right.
Where she kind of held him accountable for Parker Industries in the first issue, but then kind of, like, relented again. But for me, this is, like, the first time a writer has decided, like, since JMS has decided, like, here's a story for May that's May-driven that, we're going to get in the pages of this book. Because we've got, like, her dating JJJ Sr., but, like, that wasn't really anything for her to do necessarily. Yeah,
I mean, she's definitely got some more agency here. I mean, I I do question some of her actions here feel a little out of character for me, but I mean, we can discuss that in more detail in a second. But yeah, I mean, like it does seem like between this and also like the Friendly Neighborhood series that we're giving May some direction here, which she hasn't had for a while, just as a whole, and that's good to see because she's a good character. There's no way around it. She's an interesting, long tenured character. Where we don't need to see May kind of be the albatross anymore. So let's give her some interesting stuff to do.
Well, let's talk about the Friendly Neighborhood, which you just mentioned. We haven't talked about it on the show. We get this new B title coming out, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, written by Tom Taylor. And Mark, I haven't talked to you about this at all in person either. What do you think about that title so far? The first issue was, I think a pretty declarative step in the direction that the Spectacular book was supposed to be occupying in my mind. What did you think of this book?
Yeah, I mean, it's much more grounded. I mean, we're not dealing with like the Teresa Parker stuff, which was like kind of driving me batty when we were going through all that with, especially the way Spectacular was initially couched as a street level or more Peter driven book. But yeah, I mean, I think the one exchange we did have about it was you had mentioned that it was very Paul Jenkins-esque, thinking back to Paul Jenkins when he wrote that run on Peter Parker Spider-Man in the late 90s, early aughts. And I would agree with that. I feel like there's a very similar tone and just kind of a focus on the supporting cast, but also like Peter out of costume and Peter the person. I've been liking it so far, probably liking it more than I liked the Zdarsky Spectacular stuff for the most part.
Yeah, I agree. I thought the second issue was kind of not as spectacular, if you will. It kind of got into this weird, like, I don't know if we're getting into aliens or whatever it is, but the first issue to me was like, oh my gosh, this is exactly what I want from a B title. Like, focus on, like small neighborhood stories where they build out, like Peter, I know where Peter lives now, where in New York he lives, all the details we're not getting in the main book because it's got to kind of chart its own big, bold path. I thought the backup book was beautiful with Peter and MJ on like a date, like to having to hold in matching Spider-Man gear. And then the kind of admission by Aunt May that she has breast cancer was really quite surprising. It started a big conversation in our Slack about this kind of revelation. Like, are they going to kill May again? And how, whether or not we find that to be kind of rote, or can you still threaten to kill Aunt May and have it have any meaning? And my thought is kind of, I don't think it's necessarily about killing Aunt May. It's like giving her something to fight through. Like, is breast cancer going to reveal more about the character we didn't know before and give her something that's going to change her in a particular way? Like anything that characters might go through, this just happens to be something that could actually kill you. What was your take on the whole breast cancer thing?
Yeah, well, and also, I mean, the element of the fact that her nephew is no longer the CEO of this powerful company who can get her the best treatment money can buy. I mean, so that's going to probably be an underlying element to all this too. I don't necessarily think they're going to kill her off again. I think they're just setting this up to be drama in Peter's life, another thing for him to feel guilty about, and kind of tying up the loose ends of how the whole Parker Industry thing fell out. That's my take on it.
And I thought this was much better handled than the Jonah stuff. I mean, this came in the first issue. There was a major revelation that, if you wanted to pick up, a B title and read about that, you can. It was immediately referenced in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man. It just seems like everybody's kind of working together really well on this, as opposed to kind of Spectacular, which really felt like this weird, like, appendix, to the main book. And I like how these are working together. It seems like editorial really understands, like, how to partner these things up. Like, I'm going to keep reading Friendly Neighborhood. It doesn't feel obviously as essential, but it does feel like there's stuff I'm going to be missing out if I don't read that, rather than time travel shenanigans and space aliens. you really, give me counter programming. So that made me happy. And then I was really happy to see all that reflected in this book with the additional complications that May is now broke because, John Jonah Sr., put all of his money into Parker Industries. And, I imagine that will find its way back to Peter, who will feel guilty about it and feel like some responsibility for helping May out beyond the normal. And we've even gotten a solicit, I think, for Amazing Spider-Man, or no, it's Friendly Neighborhood, I think, number 5, where Aunt May confesses to Peter about the breast cancer thing. So it's coming down the pike for us somewhere here.
But in the meantime, this is definitely kind of in this comic, more edgier kind of May than we're used to seeing. I mean, she's slapping men around. She's busting out holograms to scare off people. I mean, is that what you want to be seeing out of May? I mean, does that feel a little out of character to you?
It feels out of character only because I feel like it's been a long time since we've seen this version of May. To me, this version of May is like the JMS May. Like the post I know Peter is Spider-Man May, where she kind of felt a little more brazen about her kind of safety and her attitude towards people. I feel like this is that May, and I'm happy to see that May back because that was the last time I felt May was really truly well written. But yeah, in terms of like the Brand New Day and Dan Slott run, I feel like this does not really seem like the May we've been getting. Does that sound accurate to you? I know you've wrinkled at this a little bit more than I did.
Well, no, I think that's fair. I mean, it's when you're used to a character being written a certain way for so long, you kind of forget, prior to the 10 years ago that she was different. I mean, she was a lot different in the JMS run, but we have not seen that in a very long time. So, yeah, some of the stuff we saw here kind of seemed a little out of whack for me. But again, like everything else with this run so far, I'm kind of in wait and see mode and benefit of the doubt, and especially in concert with Friendly Neighborhood, let's see where this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I have to admit, I did get a chuckle out of what I imagine is like the spider monster from Spider Island that people were turning into, like scaring these guys. It's kind of a weird I don't know if the book really acknowledges it, but to me it was like, of course everybody would be terrified of that because everyone lived through the most terrifying thing ever, which is everyone turning into spider monsters. I thought that was a kind of clever, look back at some history there.
Right. And then, of course, here is also where we get the Ned Leeds moment we referred to earlier. So Ned Leeds is back for something. We'll see what.
Yeah, I like that he seems to be going through some kind of dissociative identity thing where he was a guy that didn't exist and then suddenly he existed. I don't know if he remembers the events of the clone conspiracy because he was definitely there to some regard. So does he know the Jackal and all of that? I'm kind of curious to see, in the annual, he seemed very aware of who he was and his relationship to people. But here he's much more run down. He's like, I've become this homeless person. It became my new identity. And I imagine May and Peter or whoever discovers in this story arc that it is Ned Leeds will start to lead him back to who he was before, a perfectly bland character. Maybe we'll get something actually interesting with Ned Leeds this time, or maybe this will be Ned's opportunity to strike back against how the Hobgoblin wronged him.
Oh, there you go.
Or the Foreigner or something like that. I would be down for a restoring the Hobgoblin to his rightful place as not a goofy side character as Bendis wrote him for an arc or two. I'm ready for a serious Hobgoblin story again. So if Ned Leeds is how I get it, I'm here for it. But in the meantime, I think the character's being written in an interesting way. And I was going to ask you, when did you come to the realization that it was Ned Leeds? But apparently it was minutes before the show started.
Yeah, it was about a half hour ago, Dan. So congratulations. Let's talk a little bit about, to kind of put a bow on this fun little brouhaha at the restaurant with Taskmaster, Black Ant, and then the Rhino. Rhino looks great here. I mean, this was fun. This was even even the art, which I know I had issues with in other parts of the book. This felt like a lot of fun to me. Good rumble. Every very kind of some really creative pages here from Bacalo. Like what the best you could possibly expect out of a Taskmaster Black Ant fight, right?
yeah. I mean, I, at this point, we've gotten so many of these. Like, I'm always looking for something unique, and I thought the Black Ant punching the Rhino's giant head was fun way to play with scale. It reminded me of like the Brand New Day Rage of the Rhino covers with the giant, head coming through. There's certainly some of that in this book. Yeah, I thought this was fine and fun. I thought his Spider-Man looked kind of odd. He's kind of like chunky. I don't know how to put it. It's just weirdly kind of like parsed. I've always kind of been back and forth on how Bacalo does like coloring and textures. He'll sometimes find like pictures and like overlay them under his like very sparse inks. Sometimes it works for me and sometimes it doesn't. And I feel like in this book it was like a mixed affair, because he does his own, like all of his own art. And I feel like he kind of cuts some shortcuts sometimes. But yeah, this was fun. And I liked, Spider-Man's jokes and his like, oh, May Parker, you're here kind of thing. And seeing her stand up for herself was cool. If I was facing breast cancer and suddenly was facing death, maybe she feels a little empowered, by, kind of getting almost like coming face to face with death in some way.
Right. Well, clearly she's going to die because, that gun blast at the end, right? I mean, this is the end of Aunt May, right?
Absolutely. I mean, if I was more cynical, I would say that Ned Leeds is going to jump in front of her and take the bullet. But I also don't think they're going to kill Ned Leeds off already.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there'll be some other conceit to block the blast. I mean, this is another, not terribly thrilling comic book ending, even if it was, like, rendered really beautifully.
Gotcha. Any other thoughts on this issue before we give a score?
Well, did want to draw special attention because it drew attention to itself, was the letters page, which we haven't seen in, like, 15 issues or something. And the book admits as such. Like, Nick Lowe admits as such. Like, sorry we haven't seen the letters page. We're going to be trying to bring it back more often. And I feel like they say that every 5 minutes. That they're going to keep bringing this letters page back. And it's never true. But I love the letters page, especially when they print negative letters like they did here, where someone was like, this book is truly terrible, which was a little shocking because I've not heard that echoed anywhere. So, and then there's some other people that I recognize, like Chi-Town Spidey, who's a guy on Twitter that I see all the time, had a letter in there, so that was kind of neat. I don't know. I'm always looking out for people I know in the letters page. I love the letters page. I wish it would stay. I don't know why some books have it every other week, and then books like Spider-Man never have it. I don't get that.
Well, you've made how many appearances on the letters page, Dan?
3 now.
There you go. So that's 3 more than I have. So
how many letters have you written?
0.
So there you go. There you go. You got to throw the line out there if you want to catch some fish, Mark.
That's true. All right. So
I've alluded to this a number of times, but I'll give a clue. If you want to see my picture in the letters page of a comic, one of the comics I appear in is very much related to the events of this issue. I'll say that.
There you go. What's your score, Dan?
I'm giving this one a B.
I'm going to give it a B-. Just, again, some of the art didn't work for me, so I'll just notch it a little below yours. So
I want to go higher on it. My big thing about this book that I didn't say is that, like, it's not very Peter-centric. I feel like a lot of these Nick Spencer books have been not really about Peter as much. We get some great scenes with him, but it really seems still like we're setting up the table. We're putting all the villains and, supporting cast characters in their place. And inherently you can take more risks with the supporting cast characters than you can with Peter. But, like, I feel like a lot of these stories aren't really, like, driven by Peter's narrative. And I would like to see that kind of... If I'm going to give this book an A, it's got to really be kind of, like, Peter-driven.
All right. That makes sense to me. Like I said, I thought this was good setup, but there's a couple of things that kind of move it from being too remarkable from my end. So that's where I'm at. So. Dan, thanks to our patrons on Patreon, because without them, we would never have gotten that awesome review. But fear not, listeners at home, there's more where that came from, including this awesome review of Amazing Spider-Man number 15.
Mark again, just two guys talking Spider-Man. They're
Hey, Dan, how you doing?
I'm doing all right. Mark, we're a little bit delayed. Your and our lives have kind of been all over the place. You just bought a home. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. It's my very own. As you texted me, it is my amazing fantasy coming to true, right? Coming to life.
Nothing like having a mortgage for the rest of your life.
Exactly. There's nothing that says fantasy like being in debt up to your ears for the next 30 years and then some.
Wonderful. Well, so because we're delayed, we're back now to talk about Amazing Spider-Man number 15 or Legacy 816. It's got this inventory Paulo Rivera cover on it. It was fine.
Yeah, that was a cromulent cover, Dan.
And in it, we've got kind of the follow-up to the story we had last time. Mark, what did you think of this one?
I mean, this was a pretty interesting story in terms of setting up this big Craven arc that's been building for a while. But, there was also some kind of weird problematic stuff in it, both narratively and artistically, visually. So yeah, why don't we just go right into it? I mean, this Billy Connors storyline that's been going on here. I mean, definitely seems suspicious, wouldn't you say?
I think he's for sure being catfished.
Yeah.
I don't know by whom. Maybe it's the Craven and his team, and they're trying to use him to lure the lizard out or something like that. But I'm sure it is not all just other kids trying to hang out with this lizard boy. Right.
I mean, my first instinct is Craven, but then does Craven know that Billy is alive again? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like it's that to me might be up in the air, but who knows that Billy's alive again? I guess that's the other issue. Unless it's another clone, I don't know. But it definitely seems kind of squidgy here. But it was good to kind of come to that right away in this story. Kind of, I don't want to say tie a bow on it, but kind of keep the storyline progressing a bit and the mystery going. And then we go right into, of course, Spider-Man and the restaurant where May is presumed dead, right? I mean, she's got to be dead, Dan.
Under rubble, too. Who could have imagined?
I know. I mean, what a way to go. Just after announcing she's got cancer, she's going to die in a rubbly fight because Spider-Man couldn't save her, right?
This is kind of like one of those instances where, like, the bullet dodged around her and hit something else. It's like it was clearly going straight for her and Ned, who we got confirmed here that it was Ned. And somehow both of them weren't hit, but the restaurant was. But that bullet found a way to Ned either way.
Yeah, that's one magic bullet, Dan.
Yeah. So, yeah, Spider-Man kind of dives into the wreck and tries to unbury her, and in the process kind of leaves the Rhino behind, all after beating up the Taskmaster. I'm going to get right to it. Like, I thought this was kind of unspectacular. Bacalo's art I found very difficult to follow. I mean, obviously he's beating up the Taskmaster, but any of the specific details of that, which there should be considering it's the Taskmaster, right? Like, his whole thing is specific details.
Yeah, he is what is he? Is a mnemonic fighter or whatever it is, or he mimics and I don't know. I kind of have a soft spot for the Taskmaster because I feel like when he is used well, it lends itself to a lot of visual fun. It lends itself to a lot of storyline fun. I mean, because he's like someone who, on first blush, you don't think he can like hang with the big guns, but he can because of his abilities. His abilities kind of lend itself to making him a tougher out than he should be. And, it just feels like he just kind of gets his butt kicked. And like Spencer gets, I thought, a little bit of funny dialogue here about, with the Black Ant kind of mocking Taskmaster, like, oh man, that's pretty embarrassing for you, which got a chuckle out of me. But like, this is kind of like akin to Spider-Verse and watching like all the Inheritors get beat up off panel. You know what I mean? Like let's have a fun Taskmaster fight here, and we didn't do it. And that's, to me, that's a missed opportunity. And like you said, the art is just very kind of mushy and unclear to me, and not very dynamic or inspiring at all. We're more focused on Spider-Man and the rubble. I mean, that's another thing that I kind of found problematic with this whole thing, Dan. It's like we're just like, both storyline and visually, just laser focused on Spider-Man going through the rubble trying to find May, and it's like almost a little too much. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's one of my notes here. Is like he seems like obviously he really cares about May, but I've never seen him so like negligent of the others around him. Like I mean there's a good moment where it's like okay he can save May or the Rhino, and he's just like aware that like look, I may have to let the Rhino go, but he'll be okay in some form. I imagined, he knows he's going to get blowback from that. And, we get another resetting of the status quo, which is Nick Spencer going, I didn't really want the Rhino to be a good guy, so here he is. He's going to go back to hating Spider-Man. But, like, it was weird to see him, I guess more towards the latter half of the issue where he, like, saves May and Allstetter, but, like, leaves Ned behind. I was like, would he do that? I don't know. I feel like I've seen him save more than two people at a time. But for me, the bigger thing was more like he's undigging all this rubble, and we're clearly getting, another lifting moment a la Amazing Spider-Man 33. And we've got, this kind of build-up on this page, which I didn't love from Bacalo. It's like half the page is empty white space with kind of like cramped imagery. And I'm like, okay, he's doing Ditko. And then you get the page turn, and Spider-Man's not like lifting it, he's just kind of pushing it to his side. And I just thought, if you're going to build me up like that, give me a big dramatic splash. I just didn't think that the art impressed. Like, if you're going to turn the page, I better be wowed by that moment.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And it's almost like, like you said, they were clearly going for the Ditko motif, but then, obviously Spider-Man lifting rubble gets used a ton in this series and in other media. So, I wonder if they like got gun shy. Well, we don't want to totally do the lifting thing again, but instead we kind of got like this mealy in between thing, which, like you said, really didn't execute anything to a great degree. You know what I mean? Like it just kind of like happened. And again, like it's just this whole thing visually, I know we're in rubble, I know we're in tight corners and stuff like that, but like, go back to Marcos Martin and the unscheduled stop storyline with Spider-Man underground in the subway car. It's cramped, it's filled with lots of people, and that to me is just so much more visually arresting than what this is. This is just like, to me, it's hard to follow. There's no chances being taken. It just kind of feels very safe and paint by numbers and to a degree in terms of how the action is delineated. I'm just not feeling it. And yeah, like I said, just going back to your earlier point about being able to save more than two people, it just, I don't know, if you're going to go back to some old tropes of Spider-Man, I like Spider-Man having to maybe sometimes make the harder choice and potentially sacrifice May. To me, that's more speaks truly to who Spider-Man is. Him being so laser focused on May, I feel it gets around who Spider-Man is. That's not, that's the whole point. It's like he's trying to protect the ones he loves, but his responsibility is sometimes bigger than that. And this was a missed opportunity to that degree.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Although I do like nearly everything that's done with May in this issue, right? She's kind of in this pocket bubble underneath the rubble, and she's saving people and thinking about others other than herself. And not only is that kind of like showing gumption, the Parker gumption, but she's kind of demonstrating all of the morals that Spider-Man typically portrays. And, in the context of knowing that May has breast cancer, all of this suddenly takes on new meaning, or at least like an elevated meaning that it might not otherwise. And I'm already seeing like the breast cancer thing, not as like a cheap gimmick, but like, if we're going to use May in stories and this is going on, it does make it more interesting in some way. I can see her putting others before herself, and whether she knows she's going to die or go through a long struggle, it does seem that she has approached a bit of more of a holistic view towards like her place in the world. And, maybe I'm reading into it, but it does seem like those things are going together pretty well.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, I mean, this is definitely more akin to the JMS version of May, or like the Ultimate Universe version of May. I mean, it's good to, she really doesn't need the saving here, even though Spider-Man was like going in there like a bat out of hell, So it was a good twist. But then, alas, poor Ned leads, right? And we get yet another. Well, I'll let you speak to this because you're on Twitter already talking about this. What does Ned do before his untimely end, Dan?
Right, so like they're trying to get out there. Ned's warning of the ceiling caving in, which of course it does, and Ned pushes May and her like not date Allstetler away, and he gets crushed under the rubble, not before saying "look out" or shouting "look out," which I've already harped on this a number of times before. We got in the first story arc, Peter sacrificing himself to save Spider-Man from a giant like tri-sentinel laser, and he shouts "look out." And we got Boomerang sacrificing himself in the Boomerang story arc after that, where he jumps in front of the Scorcher's fire blast and saves Peter. And then now we've got this, and they're all very reminiscent of Captain Stacy saving the child before he dies while shouting "look out." And I have to think, like, I know Nick Spencer is a smart writer, and he's, I don't know whether he's just likes this trope or he likes to make an homage to that moment, or if he's doing something here. Like, what I said on Twitter was, I'm going to have to keep a lookout over this to see if it goes anywhere. But, like, I'm on to you, Nick Spencer. I know what you're doing. I see the lookouts.
But I'm Ching. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an interesting visual homage. I mean, we were just talking a few seconds ago about lifting rubble and how often that gets used and probably overused to a degree. But the lookout thing doesn't get used often enough for me to not think there's something to what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like it's a great classic moment, probably one of the best single issues of Spider-Man ever, or at least one of the greatest moments in a Spider-Man issue.
It's
Spider-Man
not on our essentials list, Mark.
I know. Let's not get into that. Essentials 2, it's coming.
There are a lot of people that will be very excited by you even joking about that.
Okay. Well, we'll see. We did dedicate a whole episode to it in season 2. So
it's true.
But yeah, so I mean, the whole lookout thing, it's a great moment. So it's kind of funny that it has not been homaged, I feel, as frequently, I mean, as some of the other kind of standard Spidey moments that we've seen over the years. So, but to use that so frequently over the span of 15 issues, I mean, there's something to it. Whether that's, are we building to some kind of ultimate sacrifice? But is Peter going to sacrifice himself? I mean, we gonna get dead Peter again? I don't know. I mean, so what's it coming to, Dan? What do you think?
I really have no idea. I just want to keep an eye on it because Nick Spencer's a writer who pays attention to the details, and this is a detail that I can't think is by accident.
Right.
But let's talk about the elephant in the room here, Mark. Ned Leeds' second death.
Yeah, I know. And pretty as inglorious as the first one, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Peter's saving of Ned is pretty cool, but I gotta admit, I was kind of disappointed that Ned died so quickly. Like, it seems clear to me that Nick Spencer wasn't keen on keeping him around and didn't really want to, yes and Dan Slott's idea of bringing Ned back, and
right.
wanted to move to a different plot, which is he ends one plot and uses it to set up another, which is good storytelling, right? He teases the Betty stuff, like she's in trouble in some way. But for me, to have Dan Slott go through the trouble of bringing back a core cast member, that's something you shouldn't do very often, and that the work was done for that, and then so discarded in this way, in a very minor way, before anybody really even realized that he was back. Peter even mentions, I'm not even going to tell Betty about this because I don't want her to get upset over something she doesn't even need to know about. It's it's a missed opportunity, I think. I mean, how would you feel about it?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, to me, the only potential catch or caveat to that is if the fact that Peter doesn't reveal this comes back to haunt him in some way. You know what I mean? Like Ned, and I don't even know how that is. I don't think that's what Spencer is going for here. It's very clear, to your point, that he's just trying to get rid of this storyline. He's clearly not interested in playing with it. But I don't know, maybe maybe we'll be surprised and it'll come back in a weird kind of way and boomerang Peter in a way that causes conflict with him and Betty. But yeah, otherwise, if you take it at face value here, it's disappointing. We really didn't get any resolution to it. I mean, I wasn't necessarily looking forward to Ned Leeds being back, but he, if you have him, why not use him? It's kind of, we haven't seen Harry Lyman in a while either, so I don't know what's going on there. Like why not use some of these characters? But it just seems like that's not the priority here.
And it's not like Dan Slott's version of Ned was really on a crash course with our characters. Like, last we saw him was he was discarding a beard disguise in the park. Like, clearly up to his own thing and not wanting to get involved more directly with the main cast of the book. So, like, if this character never appeared in Spencer's run and allowed another writer to play with him down in the future, like, why not allow it, to work out that way? I mean, look, I just said last episode that, like, I'm in a more wait-and-see attitude with Nick Spencer because he seems to, like, keep bringing stuff back over and over again. Like, do I think this is the last we're going to hear from Ned? It seems like it, but, you're right, like you said, maybe I'm wrong. But I have to say, like, yeah, I thought that's disappointing because also I felt like the tease for Betty is so vague. It doesn't really give me enough to get interested in. I'm like, oh, Betty's in some vague trouble. I'm like, isn't that just essentially always the case? Like, I'm not really, like, throwing up a flare right now.
Yeah.
It's like he doesn't know what that story is, so he wasn't going to get into much more detail about it.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure he does, but it's like, give me something a little more to chew on here.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I guess the only potential red flag is Betty is in Europe, as we know. And that's, of course, where Ned died back in the day. So maybe, are we going to come around full circle on that?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't think anybody's itching for the foreigner to reappear. Although, like, it'd be nice to get him in a room and be like, okay, can you explain what happened with the Ned thing? Like, why was he in the hobgoblin pajamas? What's going on here?
He's like, nobody can except for Peter David and Christopher Priest. And we tried to get Christopher Priest to explain it, and you all heard what happened in the 200th episode. So
yeah, and I'm still getting crap from Ron Friends about that.
So with that out of mind, we tie up another bow with May here. We're getting May back with the feast. The what do you call it? The shelter that she worked at with during the Mr. Negative days during Brand New Day. Good little come back around to this, right?
It's nice to give May something to do.
Yeah.
She's been so, I'm just giving you vague money and stuff. And, like, I don't know how she's going to have the money to reopen Feast, but, like, to me, I liked when she was in Feast, and I felt like it was a great way to get her involved with kind of more street-level stuff with Spider-Man. Like, if Spider-Man's not going to be with the newspaper, like, he can always go to the homeless shelter and find out what's happening around town. Yeah. I think, especially in the video game, they really used Feast for that purpose. And I think it serves as a good kind of in-between, like, Peter being a teacher and finding out about his students, and Peter using the newspaper and finding out about the city. Like, if Feast comes back in that way, it's going to allow May to be more active. I just think it's a good place for that character.
Yeah, and I mean, who knows? Maybe this brings Mr. Negative back into things. I don't know. He's not dead, right? Am I talking about bringing back a dead character?
No, he is not dead. But okay. I love the idea of him coming back and being like, I own the copyright on the Feast name.
Yeah.
That's his big bone to pick.
There you go. There's got to be something there. Well, he's in like you said, he's in the video game, right? So, I mean, there would be a hook to bring him back. So, anyway.
Sure, there's a whole audience of people that had never heard of Mr. Negative before, but suddenly know him.
Yeah. So, but before we get back into a villain like Mr. Negative, we end this issue with this big setup with Kraven, where he is getting from your favorite story of all time, Secret Empire, Dan, the Planetary Shield. I like Secret Empire. I finally read it a few months ago, and I do agree with you. It was a great series. It got, I feel, unfairly maligned by people.
I think it's the best event since Secret Wars.
I would agree with that unquestionably. I found it in some ways better than Secret Wars, but anyway. But yeah, so we're getting the Planetary Shield, but do we think he's using it just on Central Park or the entire New York City. To me, that was a little unclear from the ending, but like he's going to use it more localized. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, my suspicion was that it was just Central Park, right? I mean, we've seen several early Craven stories where he lures Spider-Man to Central Park. It seems to me like, the implication is Central Park, and he's going to release all of these animal-themed characters and just hunt them down one by one. That's what I imagine the story's about.
Yeah, I mean, certainly a big and robust storyline for Craven, and even Arcade is like, wow, you're really going over the top here, buddy. But like, there's a lot of fun and potential in that, like kind of locking Spider-Man in a cage with all these animal-themed villains and Craven. Like, lots of fun can come from that, I think.
Even I think Grim Hunt took place in Central Park, so it's kind of a like central ground for Craven to do what he does.
Right. But I guess the planetary shield just makes it impossible for any help to get in. That's going to be the catch to this one, right?
Right. It's like Spider-Man, but under the dome.
Yeah. Welcome to the Thunderdome.
If we get Spider-Man in some kind of weird leather thong, I'm all there for it.
Woo! Any? You want to do grades?
Yeah, sure. This one's like a B- to me.
Yeah, that's right what I was thinking, Dan. B-. I mean, some of the demerits, but like also some fun stuff. And I'm looking forward to this Craven story. I think this is going to be a lot of fun. We haven't had a really good, fun, knockdown, drag out, multi-part arc with just like a villain like Craven in a really long time.
Yeah, I think the entire like Nick Spencer run for the most part. Like this is the villain that we've been craving. I hate that I said that now.
You're craving Craven?
I am. I that was a slip of the tongue. Do not blame me for that one. Mark, as I'm talking to you right now, Hunted is already half done. But let's take a look back at how it all started in our review of Amazing Spider-Man number 16.
What's new? Is Spider-Man still wearing red or is it blue? Maybe he took a week off 'cause he had the flu. But probably not 'cause his methods seem tried and true. Let's find out in the Spider-Man review.
I'm really excited to talk about this issue, Mark, because it's a really strange issue of Amazing Spider-Man, and those are always the ones that get the best reactions out of us, I think.
Truly. And I mean, not for nothing. I feel like this is the kickoff of the Hunted storyline by Nick Spencer. We got some art from Ryan Otley here, and this is, we've been building towards this for a while. This feels like this is the first real big Spencer story of this run after 16 issues. With Slott, we've had Spider Island and Spider-Verse and Clone Conspiracy. So this is Spencer's turn to kind of really tell a big, long-form, long-game story. And it was certainly, like you had said, interesting first chapter.
And I feel about this issue kind of how I feel about like a lot of Nick Spencer's run, which is like it's totally solid and like I get it. It seems to have a real kind of like clear mission and goal for where it's heading in some ways, even if it's not all revealed yet. And yet, structurally, I have real questions about it, and it makes me wonder, like, is editorial totally absent? And like, how are these books being arranged chronologically? Like, it's less a complaint about this issue and more like a, why didn't we get a lot of this stuff earlier? And so, like, I don't know, Mark, do you feel similarly and just want to jump right into the first really odd thing in this book?
Yeah, in terms of the teases, like, I mean, we finally get the reveal involving the hunter, the poacher that gets attacked by Kraven the Hunter way back when was this, like issue 5 that we saw this little cameo or something like that, or was it even earlier than that?
It was like little bits from 2 through 5, right? And ultimately we got the Kraven reveal in 5.
I mean, I don't know if I needed to get like more than what we got in those stories, but I also feel like based on what we ultimately end up getting in this story, like I don't quite get why we needed to tease it the way we did. Like there probably would have been more interesting thing to teases, including to me what was the first most problematic thing about the story, which was kind of when we get the backstory of where this all was headed. I kind of want to jump to that. I don't know.
Yeah,
what do you think?
yeah. Let's get right to it because I do not understand why this book was structured this way.
Yeah, so I mean, we get this. We basically, for the synopsis of 16, this is where Craven's plan gets laid out in terms of what he's been doing for the last 15 issues and all these little like cameos and stuff like that. What he was doing with Arcade the last few issues prior to this. This is, we get the backstory, but we start with this like outrageous story that's almost like framed like a recap page, right? Like it felt like a recap, but this was all new content because I don't remember the story at all, right?
The whole time I was reading it, I was like, what book did I miss where this happened? And I'm really good about keeping up with Craven, right? Like he was in the Venom book, he's been in Squirrel Girl, and he's like appeared, in Captain America. He was hired to hunt down Captain America during the Mark Waid run, and I was like, okay, I'm fully up on Craven. Like he went to jail. There's a lot of stuff going on with him, but reading this, I was like, this can't possibly be new here. It's couched between real stuff we'd actually read in the pages of Amazing Spider-Man, from like Craven's Last Hunt to Grim Hunt to all the things we'd seen in like the Scarlet Spider, story where, he became not immortal anymore. And then we get this stuff with him like finding the High Evolutionary, which you're going in the right direction in a Spider-Man comic when the High Evolutionary shows up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mean to paint in broad strokes here, Dan, but there are not many, if any, Spider-Man comics involving the High Evolutionary that I've ever walked away from being like, that was a good comic. You know what I mean? So, I think of the High Evolutionary. I mean, this is stuff from like the drugged out cosmic era of Spider-Man comics, not Spider-Man comics, of Marvel comics, and I just never saw where the fit was in Spider-Man when he's made his appearances there. But we get, like you said, this outlandish story that I think you're right. What was so disarming about it and structurally weird about it was we start the setup with recapping actual moments that we recognize, like Craven's suicide and then the Grim Hunt stuff, like you said, the Scarlet Spider stuff. But then we go into this wacky tale of what he's basically creating. Well, they're not clones, right? I mean, are they considered clones? Do they use the C word? It's
like he's got a dozen Boba Fetts of his own, where he's got these like rapidly aging clones of himself that he's training, this like army of Cravens, and ultimately they kind of all go off on their own hunts, only to be killed off by, I don't know, let's call him like Craven Jr., yeah. This one remaining Craven character, who kills all the other Cravens, and it's like the prodigal son returns. And for me, it's like, going back to issues 2 through 5, though we complained about how uneventful those teases were and how obvious they were that it was Craven, but like, that recap in this issue comes back to like him being like, you know what? I'm not going to kill you, dude. I'm going to, make you a hunter, and like that would have been actually a really intriguing tease at the end of issue 5 where it's like, oh, it's not what we were expecting. Craven's going to train other hunters, or even this, like have this whole clone thing build up for a little while and then have him be like, you know what? Like, I'm sending all of my sons out on their own hunts, right? So then you get to this issue and you have the kid come back and he's killed all the other Cravens. Like, there was a way to set this up earlier and then have it kind of reappear here with it wouldn't be so jarring. But to get this enormous, complicated history and resolve it in this way, it's too much for me to handle, honestly. And I like my comics weird, and to me, this felt like an issue of Invincible, with like really big, bold, strange comic theory ideas. But like Spider-Man's always been grounded and Craven's always kind of been grounded. Like to me, I mean, to the extent that he can be coming back from the dead, this was just like a bridge too far to like cover in a recap.
Yeah, but even the way he comes back from the dead it's kind of a ritualistic thing given like kind of the premise of the character. That always made sense to me.
And given like 30 issues of buildup.
Yeah, well, that too. But like you said, yeah, I mean, like if you're gonna tease anything from this story, why like do this like very unrevealing tease about this poacher for the last umpteen issues, and not, like you said, like stuff like, oh wow, there are like copies of Craven running around. What does that mean? You know what I mean? Or oh, Craven is recruiting other hunters. What could that mean? Or like it just doesn't make sense. And like, you know, like I'm going to give this story a fuller chance to kind of wow me here, Dan, but like just the general plan that he's doing here, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't get what the pull is here. So he's been rounding up, obviously, these animal-like villains, but like I was like, oh, so he's going to like put them like all in a jungle with Spider-Man and, you know, like set them after Spider-Man, but it's like, no, that's not either, right? It's like he's having these noble, he's trying to have these poachers like to do it the noble way and go after these villains because they're not noble either. Like, is that like, it doesn't make sense to me, Dan. It's not working. Something is not clicking here for this story.
Yeah, I agree with you. The only thing that keeps me like somewhat hesitant about really like coming down is that like Craven Jr. doesn't really seem to get it either. He's like, I don't understand what you're doing. I think Craven ultimately, there's some other plan going on, which is, you know, like, I mean, he obviously seems to me like to be like almost sarcastically hyping up these people, although he's, you know, suggests that he understands their motives, right? Like everybody wants to be a hunter. It's base man instinct, which is kind of always been Craven's kind of thing. And he's trying to leave like a legacy behind. So it seems to me almost like he's trying to be corrective in some way. You know, he's like, I can't beat man's nature to hunt, so I might as well like teach it to operate the right way and kind of punish these people who are taking on the animalistic characters of animals. Although to me, I don't understand how Black Ant is working for Craven. Like, right? Like, doesn't that go against the very credo? So like, I don't know. Maybe there'll be a point in the story where Taskmaster turns on Black Ant and Craven orders him to capture Black Ant. I mean, it's like he's got an animal in his name.
Right. Yeah. No, it's, I mean, I get what you're saying. And like, and, you know, to that point, I'm not ready to like bail on this story, but like between just the weirdness of how these reveals are treated to, you know, the High Evolutionary to Boba Fett, Craven, like I was expecting a lot more of this master plan to feel kind of diabolical. Like, I don't even get what the threat to Spider-Man is. Like, what is like did you walk away from this comic being like, oh man, how is Spidey going to get out of this?
No, and the only person who brings up Spider-Man is Craven Jr. You know, he's like, we're going to kill the spider together, and then I'm going to take my like rightful place at, you know, at the top of the Craven legacy. And to me, that's interesting. You know, like, right. How do you top Craven's last hunt? Well, you have a Craven kill not only Spider-Man, but Craven as well. You know what I mean? Right? Like, don't let Craven kill himself. Have another Craven kill Craven and Spider-Man. Boy, right. I'm just saying Craven a lot. But that doesn't even seem to be the threat here, right? Like, it almost seems like if Spider-Man's involved in this, it'll be somewhat incidental.
Yeah.
You know? Like, it seems like it's moving on without him already.
Right. I mean, it's kind of like that scene in Austin Powers where, like, Scott Evil's like, let's just take a gun and shoot him, Dad. And he's like, nah, I don't want to do it like that. You know what I mean? Like,
I mean, I imagine that at some point Spider-Man will find his way, you know, in here and they'll capture him to include him in the hunt or something. Or like he'll go in to save Billy Connors or something. But yeah, you're right. It's like, okay, like, in Spider-Man's world, like, would it be so bad that Craven is hunting all of these villains in some way?
Right. I mean, you know, it's not like outside of Rhino that he's got any kind of benevolent connection to these guys. So what's the point? You know, like, it just seems very odd to me. Yeah. I mean, outside of that mention, we barely see Spider-Man in this comic, which, I mean, like, I'm not opposed to that. We have plenty of good comics over the years. Even recently, there was like a couple of good, like, Norman Osborn stories that really didn't have any Spider-Man in it. Like, I feel like this was a case of like, again, I don't even know what the threat to Spider-Man was supposed to be. Like, what is supposed to make me read this as a Spider-Man person, as someone who reads Spider-Man comics to see how does he get out of this, and how does he come back from this, and how are we going to torture Spider-Man some more?
It's almost the opposite of the Dan Slott era, which is like Dan Slott's ideas were always pretty clear. You know, like it's the clone conspiracy. It's about clones, and it's like, Spider Island. The Jackal wants to turn everybody into Spider-Men, and they were always pretty clear. And then it was the details where it kind of fell apart. I have more faith in Nick Spencer in regards to the details, but I don't think he's presenting his conflict entirely clearly here. Even if I feel like, okay, I know where all the pieces are, I just don't know really what they're after.
Right. Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is, and this was, of course, something that drove some fans crazy about him, but Dan Slott always had a penchant for, how can I torture Peter more? You know what I mean? Like how do I turn the screw against Spider-Man some more? And that kind of almost sickness to torture the main character drove the bulk of his 100+ issues on Spider-Man. And yeah, like you said, is Spider-Man truly going to, outside of Billy Connors, is Spider-Man truly going to mind this situation? Like you said, I feel like at this point his involvement is incidental. It's going to be like, oh, I guess I got to do this. So I feel like more should have been done in this issue to kind of set up, and why should Spider-Man care?
This issue is kind of like a stand-in for me of all the troubles I've had with the Spencer run so far, which is Spider-Man's involvement seems incidental, and there's no personal stakes for him other than say the first issue. And the storytelling weaves between weird narration and montage and stuff in ways that just it doesn't hold together. Is this a flashback? Is it a montage? How much am I supposed to invest in this? It just seems a little all over the place. So I can like it and see that it's competent overall, but it's just, it doesn't really hang together. And I wonder again, if these are just meant to be read in a trade. They really the single issue format has just kind of been, I don't know, even in a double-sized issue like this, So, yeah, I don't know. Do you want to talk about the backup story?
Sure. I do want to note, before we get to the backup, that despite all that, I did feel like Otley's artwork was a plus on this. I liked seeing Otley back on this. I think his kind of hyper stylized version of this kind of lent to the weirdness of it, even though I was kind of not into the weirdness of the narrative. At least the art kind of matched it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, his high evolutionary looked like something straight out of the pages of Invincible. I really felt like reading this. I was reading even just narration wise, it felt like an Invincible. And Ryan Otley there really kind of brings that home. But yeah, I mean, his stuff is incredible. Even just some of the simple things that he does, the tortured animals that the poachers are killing.
Right.
That image of the rhino with no horn is really kind of haunting. It's just, he's a beautiful artist, and his Craven with Laura Martin's colors is really a striking interpretation of the character.
Yeah. So in terms of the backup, the backup focuses on Billy Connors and his phone friend who gets him to come out to the dance club, I guess. I don't know. This payoff here wasn't really much of anything that we were talking about last time, right?
No, I mean, it's not catfishing or really anything. This character Becca doesn't even seem to know anything about Billy for all of her urging to get him out the door. She's not really caring about whether he shows up at the club and actively flees him. I figured the whole setup with this was that she knew about him being a lizard thing, and he would get out there and be made fun of or something like that. It just doesn't really do anything with it. And neither is it Craven the Hunter teasing him in some way. They end up capturing him at the end of the issue, Black Ant and Taskmaster, incidentally. They just happen to see him.
Yeah, it's kind of oh, look, there's another one of them running around. Let's get this one now. But was it they were out desperately looking for lizard characters, right? I mean, that wasn't my sense from the way it kind of came about.
It's just weird. He stopped by a bouncer, and he doesn't really get Martha, Connors or the actual lizard out the door, because they're we'll just call Spider-Man. Maybe Billy Connors is the stake that gets Spider-Man involved in the hunted storyline, but in terms of setup, I just thought you could like do something a little more interesting than this. It's like kind of takes my investment in that B plot and makes it like a nothing burger.
Yeah. And then of course there's the art of this B plot, which I don't know, was not for me. What about for you, Dan?
I think the first appearance of Peter Parker kind of sums up my feelings on this art, is that we open up with Peter vomiting into the toilet. That's kind of how I feel about the art in this book. It's like you couldn't get, like, I don't know. I mean, I hate like crapping on people's artwork, you know? Like, they're obviously more talented than me, but like you got really like weird distended faces and figures and proportions, and like, you know, Peter's eating soup later on that looks like he's actually re-eating his vomit. Like, I hate to be crass about it, but it's really ugly. Like, I just thought it was really ugly, like, to look at. And from a major book from Marvel, it's like, I don't know. I mean, like, I think about, like, the Batman series and the backups in that book, and they have, like, you know, Marcos Martin and you know, John Romita Jr. and, like, really amazing artists doing backups in those books. And it's like, this is the artist you could get on this?
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, I don't want to like pile on, but it just felt very, like you said, there is a list of celebrated artists on this book. I don't know if this kind of meshes with that theme and that idea of what we've usually seen on the flagship book. We did get some, as disappointing as the Billy story was. I mean, we did kind of get some interesting tie-ins or kind of things coming full circle. I mean, most notably with Aunt May, we talked about in our last episode at length kind of how Peter / Spider-Man's desire to save May from the rubble, like that real drive was almost like a little unnerving and a little too much. Like why was he just so focused to the point that he seemed to be having blinders on about everything else? And this kind of pays that off and says, oh yeah, he admits he screwed up by being that way.
Yeah, I liked that. It's kind of a classic Spider-Man thing, right? Like he had two decisions and he made, you know, whatever the best one he felt like at the time was. And so that, yeah, that was interesting. The thing that really stood out to me in this issue, and maybe I'm making a big deal out of it, but like, you know, Peter says that he starts in this issue sick, kind of out of nowhere. And, Mary Jane is kind of like, I don't really want you going out as Spider-Man, but she kind of relents, because this is a new Mary Jane. She believes in Spider-Man now.
Right. Instead
of the one of Brand New Day era and Dan Slott's run, where she like, I don't want you going out. I'm terrified for you kind of thing. So that's nice. But he says that he was sick and he hasn't been sick since ... And to me, cutting off that line seemed like a tease. Maybe I'm reading too much into it. But then I've been like racking my brain. Like, when was the last time he was notably sick in a story that would matter for something like this? I mean, does anything come to mind for you?
No, and it's an interesting observation. I mean, I'm not saying you're reading too much into it, but like I might have even just glossed over it because I wasn't thinking in terms of when was the last time he was sick in a significant way. I mean, like there are certainly plenty of stories in Spider-Man history where him being sick played a pivotal role in the outcome of the story, but this was not. I can't think of anything recently. I mean,
I don't want to go down the path of like demon-fueled sickness. I think one of our people in the Slack was saying, I remember him being sick during, One More Day or Sins Past. And I'm like, I don't remember that. The last time I remember him like being sick is like during maybe like was he sick in the Bacalo, like winter, Aztec story? Like, was there a major sickness that he had during Dan Slott's run? I can't think of one. There's maybe one of those things where, like, one of our Patreon listeners writes in and goes, he was sick during XYZ.
I mean, I guess you could say he was technically sick during the last few issues before ASM 700 when he was dying as Doc Ock.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, yeah.
But like, are we going that far in this? You know what I mean? Like, is that what we're considering, like, to be where the mindset is? I don't know.
I don't know. None of it seems to fit in with, like, it's just a random sickness, but that line, I don't know why you would throw that line out there unless you were trying to, like wink at something, but I don't know what it's winking at.
Right. Meanwhile, what's up with, like, Black Cat having spider tracers?
Yeah, I don't know what that like. They're not even like cat themed. There's just flat out spider creatures. Did Spider-Man go like when they made up? They're like, here's some of my tech. Enjoy. I don't know.
Yeah, that didn't make much sense. I definitely kind of furrowed my eyebrow at that reveal for certain.
And then we got the kind of like blink it and you'll miss it after the letters page in this book where Arcade shows up at the Plaza Hotel, which is famously the hotel formerly owned by Trump and that appears in Home Alone 2.
Right.
If you know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
And he's like showing up with all the, the hunters and the kind of like animalistic villains in capsules on like a barge, I'm guessing. And what looks to be, and this is my read on it, that like these like Kraven's facial hair styled body armor for all of the participants to operate in, because I can't imagine they're like going in as normal people and fighting against supervillains. Like my read was that they're like Iron Man suits that happen to look like Kraven that they're going to be hunting in.
And why not?
I mean, why not? And that's kind of fun. An interesting tease. I was a little confused by it at first, but then I like kept looking at it and kind of ferreted it all together,
Understood. You want to go to grades on this?
Yeah, sure. What are you going to give it, Mark?
I'm going to give it a C. I mean, I'm not... there's a part of me that might even think lower, but I want to see where it's going. There was some fun art in it. There were a couple of story elements that didn't bother me too much, but this was a rough start considering this has kind of been the story we've been building for a while. But I'm gonna keep an open mind and stick it right there as an average story.
Yeah, it's a C for me too. I mean, it's beautiful to look at when it is beautiful. I want to be thrilled by that Kraven stuff, but it is baffling, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, this is not where I expected us to be, and not in the good way, I guess. Yeah, but let's see where we go, and we're gonna have some fun one shot. So there's hope for that too.
It hasn't fully tampered, my excitement. You know what I mean? Like it's like I have the sense that there's a plan here, and like maybe with time, all of this stuff will begin to make sense. It's not that the narrative is bad; it's just badly constructed. It's like it needs an editor who can help Nick kind of put all this together in an appropriate way.
I think that's totally fair. All right, everyone. Well, thanks again for joining us for our review roundup episode of the all-new Amazing Spider Talk. Dan, what's coming down the pike for us in the future?
Well, as we teased on our last episode, next week we've got our 5th episode of Season 3, where we'll be joined by J.M. DeMatteis to talk about Peter's increasingly tumultuous relationship with his frenemy, Harry Osborn.
Also, for our Patreon subscribers, be sure to check out our Patreon page and your podcast feed this week, where we've already got special reviews of the entire Nick Spencer run up through issue 20. Today, we talked about how Hunted got started, but if you're reading this epic story, why not help support our show and get caught up with all of our opinions of the story at the same time? Remember, for just $3.99 a month, the price of a new comic, you'll get access to our exclusive new issue reviews, B-Book reviews, and more. And for $10 or more a month, you'll get access to some awesome commissioned artwork, this time from Barry Kitson as he depicts the tremendously sad moment that Spider-Man learned of Gwen's demise.
It's going to be really sad. He just sent me the thumbnails the other day, and they are really awesome. So I'm looking forward to seeing what Barry is going to cook up for us.
Awesome, or sad even.
Yeah, just hang this sad tableau on your wall of the moment we all can't forget. It's going to be beautiful. So if you want a piece of Spider-Man history hanging on your wall, that's the way to do it. But in the meantime, also check out the Untold Talks of Spider-Man. They're our sister podcast that not enough of you are listening to. If you want more Spider-Man goodness in your day, that's the show to go get it. It's the Untold Talks of Spider-Man, and they just join up and talk about random issues of Spider-Man that are untold treasures. And this time they're talking about an issue from Tangled Web of Spider-Man, which is one of the best Spider-Man B titles ever printed, if you were to ask me.
Oh, I agree with that 100%.
Lots of great stories in there. Plus, we've also got the amazing Spider Slack community for you to join. Just check out this episode's description to our link to join our Spider-Man talking community. It's like this forum on your phone where you can talk anything you want in regards to Spider-Man. And I set up all these channels for different types of conversation. So I just set up the Avengers Endgame spoilers channel for anybody who's seen the movie to join in and wants to talk about it without the scolding eyes of the internet. You know, like you want to talk about that favorite moment of yours, but you can't do it because you don't want to be that guy that ruined it for the other people and yada, yada, yada. Here you can just go hog wild and we won't judge you for it.
Dan, you just mentioning the words favorite moment kind of felt like a spoiler to me, and I don't appreciate that because I've not seen it yet. So,
Mark, there are favorite moments in the movie. I'll say that.
I don't want to hear this. I don't want to hear this. No spoilers, okay? And that goes to everyone who's listening to this right now. Do not spoil this movie for me. It's going to be another week before I see it. Just deal with it, okay? Thank you.
And Mark and I will be talking about that movie at some point.
Yes.
We assure you.
After Mark is a normal, stops being abnormal and like doesn't see the most anticipated movie in the world, like the weekend it comes out for whatever reason. So whatever.
So Mark, when you are done with your Twitter exile, where might people find you on the internet?
Yeah, I mean, I probably will be avoiding Twitter for the next week or so, but when I'm back, you can find me at Chasing ASM blog. And of course, you can always buy my book, 100 Things Spider-Man Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die, written many movies ago without spoilers.
And I'm going to be on Twitter as well, sending Mark fake spoilers for Avengers Endgame just to test and see whether or not he's actually on Twitter. And if you'd like to join me on that challenge, you can go to me on Twitter at @SupSpiderTalk and offer Mark reassurance that these moments are, in fact, very real.
What's the lesson, Dan?
Oh, yes. There is a lesson in all this, and it might be that I shouldn't do that to Mark. But, Mark, you're going to tell us otherwise. What is the lesson that I should take away?
Well, the first lesson is with great spoilers comes no more co-host. The other lesson is with great podcasts must also come the all-new Amazing Spider Talk.
Don't miss the next installment. Spider-Man, just one spider seems a web any size.